It's not often you see the name of an actress in a game title, but it really does help sell games. The Pirate Queen is a narrative VR adventure set in the early 1800s, voice acted by American actress Lucy Liu. As usual, I'm breaking this game down into 6 categories. Each category will get a score out of 6, but stick around to the end. The overall score will give you a better look into the try to enjoy it experience. That said, let's get right into it, starting with the backbone of any narrative adventure, the theme. This game is set in the early 1800s where you play as soon-to-be Pirate Queen Ching Shih. The endings in games are usually unknown until you beat it or until someone spoils it, but this game is based on historical events. You can definitely tell this project wasn't originally designed as a game because it feels more like a buggy interactive story. More on that later, but it's nice to experience history through the eyes of someone with a strong moral compass as they're making big decisions. Like many of you, I thought Blackbeard was the greatest pirate in history, but after playing this game, I learned some interesting things, one of which had some impressive numbers. At the height of her pirate career, Ching Shih commanded roughly 30,000 pirates, around 70,000 people if you include the non-pirate members of her colony. To put that into perspective, Blackbeard commanded an embarrassing 300 in comparison. The theme here gets a score of 4 out of 6 because pirates are as good a theme as any. I probably wouldn't choose a history lesson over a game, but if I had to choose a theme I liked, it'd be pirates. Speaking of likes, you should tap the like button for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe while you're down there. Once you do that, we can move on to the next category, mechanics. Now I have to say, for a game this simple, I expected more here. There are so many bugs here that I ended up changing the difficulty settings. The levels are designed in an escape room style, so I wanted to be sure that I was the reason I was getting stuck and not the game. You can interact with your environment, but there's a noticeable lack of polish. In a story-driven narrative adventure with a simple design, this is pretty disappointing. I tried this game not expecting much environmental interaction. What I did expect was for those interactions to work properly. In one chapter, you're expected to sneak into the main bad guy's room, but I couldn't walk through the doorway at first because an invisible wall bug was blocking me. Eventually, I got in the room, but whenever I looked towards a specific wall, the screen would kill my eyesight and black out until I looked away. I'm genuinely surprised I even managed to finish this game at all. Because of these problems and many more, this category gets a 1 out of 6. In a game this linear, I expect a few things you can do to work as intended, and unfortunately that's just not the case. That said, let's move on to the next category, visual quality. One of the first things I do when I play any of these games is turn the graphics settings to max. This game made that very difficult because you won't find any graphical settings in-game. To change the settings, you have to go into the property settings on the Steam page, but you won't see them unless you're looking at the page in Steam VR. Unfortunately, even with the graphics settings turned up, there's almost no change because the textures aren't very good. Aside from your hands, almost everything you look at will feel like something out of a PlayStation 2 game. I'm playing this game on the Meta Quest 3, and at 2K resolution, the visuals are rough around the edges to say the least. If you have a Quest 2 or any slightly older headset, you should expect this game to look even worse. It pains me to say this, but this category gets a 1 out of 6. Visuals are important in any VR experience. There's so much you have to look at closely, and the low resolution textures really hurt the visual experience here. So much so that it has a noticeable effect on the next category, immersion. This game calls itself a narrative adventure, and naturally there are expectations that come with that. One such expectation is perspective. You play as the Pirate Queen in first person, and the idea is that you're experiencing this story through her. I had 2 immersion killing problems with this, one of which I'll cover in the next category. The other was the lack of an actual body. I'm sure most of us can agree that being a floating pair of hands with no body takes away from the immersion aspect of virtual reality. Speaking of bodies, you can expect every NPC you meet to look like a shadow. As you play through the game, you'll hear people talking and clamoring without actually seeing them. This feels out of place given the amount of people that are supposed to be around you. If important NPCs make an appearance, they look like silhouettes hidden behind foggy glass panes. I get that it would have taken significantly more effort to add actual bodies to the game, but I didn't see a single body my entire playthrough, not even when being chased, and it really hurt the immersion. On that note, not once did I feel like I was actually in danger during this daring adventure. Obstacles aside, the environment was so static I didn't have to worry about jump scares or being attacked because it all felt predictable. Unfortunately, this category gets a 2 out of 6. There are more reasons, but I don't want this to turn into a rant, so let's move on to the next category, audio quality. You would expect a game like this, involving a famous actress, to have excellent audio quality. You'd be correct in that assumption.
I won't have my fleet live in such fear.
The audio in this game is definitely one of its better features. The voice acting across the board for all characters was done pretty well, in fact. You'll be talked to a lot in this game, and not once did it actually feel unnatural. The only problem I ran into, which also hurt immersion in the last category, was the voice in my head. Throughout the game, you're the aspiring leader of this massive pirate fleet, but your inner voice will keep pulling you out of the experience by saying things you wouldn't actually say if you're talking to yourself.
There, in the water. Do you see?
Depending on what you're doing, you either felt like the pirate queen or some ghost that's just along for the ride. Aside from that and the occasional mistimed voice line, the background music did a great job setting the mood. The ambient sounds of wind blowing and burning wood sound natural too. This category gets a 5 out of 6. The excellent voice acting helped bring this score up a bit, but even without it, the audio wasn't bad. Lastly, we'll talk about motion aids. This category will be short because the options are few and you don't actually need many in a game like this to begin with. You can choose whether you want to play seated or standing. You can also choose between teleport or traditional movement, and you can adjust whether you want snap or smooth turning for your right joystick. Kind of sucks that you can't turn this off, but this isn't a very complicated game, so it really doesn't hurt the experience here. This category gets a 3 out of 6 because every motion aid you'd expect is here and they work as intended. And with all of the nitpicking out of the way, let's look at this game from a try to enjoy it perspective. I mentioned it earlier, but this game feels more like a buggy interactive story than an actual game. The idea here is to put you in the shoes of the Pirate Queen and experience history in first person. The amount of bugs and lack of polish is a big problem for this game, so much so that it noticeably affects the overall experience in a bad way. This category walks away with an overall score of 2 out of 6. The experience is the most important part of any interactive adventure, and the lack of quality control all but kills this experience. With all that said, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you've learned something new. I've got new reviews headed your way weekly, and I'd hate for you to miss anything, so subscribe for more VR content. If you have any thoughts on interactive stories in VR, drop a comment below, and until next time, stay immersed.